That afternoon, I had just come home from the grocery store, still holding several bags, when I saw Michael, my son, standing in the living room. Light came in through the window and lit up his face, but it didn't make his cold look any softer. I didn't even get a chance to ask anything before he spoke. His voice strong and cutting like a knife. "Mom, I'm tired of seeing you every day." Froze. My hand held the plastic handles so tight they hurt my skin. "What did you just say?" I asked, hoping I heard him wrong. Michael didn't look away. "I want space, Mom. You're around too much. My wife feels the same way. You should find another place so we can live our own lives." His words felt like someone had slapped me in the face in bright daylight. I heard every word as if someone was carving them into my mind. "This house, I bought it with my money. The papers are still in my name. I paid for it completely, no debt, just because I wanted my son to have a good start. I chose to move into the smallest room. I shared my time to help the couple, and now I've become a problem." "Really? Are you saying that?" I tried to keep my voice steady even though I felt like a rock was pressing on my chest. Michael paused for a moment, then his voice got harder. "I'm just saying what we both think. You know, my wife has never felt comfortable with you here." I looked him in the eyes. "So I put up all the money to buy this house, and in the end I have to leave my own home?" He was silent, a silence that didn't try to argue but also showed no sorry feelings. Outside, a car passed by. Its engine sound faded into the distance. Inside the house, the only sound left was my heart pounding in my ears. Never in my life did I imagine this day. The day my own son would look at me as if I were something to be pushed aside when it's no longer useful. I took a deep breath and set the bags on the table. "All right," I said. "Just one word. No arguing, no begging." Michael looked a little surprised, maybe because he expected me to cry or get angry, but I simply walked to my room and closed the door. With my back against the cold wall, I slid down to the floor. The shock still hadn't faded. I remembered the day I gave him the keys to the house. His face was so happy. He promised, "Mom will always have a place here." All of that was now just broken pieces of a memory. In the living room, I heard Michael talking to someone on the phone. His voice was light, relaxed, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Suddenly, I understood. This wasn't a sudden decision. It was a planned move, and I was just now getting the notice. My chest felt tight, but deep down another thought began to grow. If they want me to leave, I'll leave. But not empty-handed. I stayed still in the room, listening to the tick-tock of the wall clock. Each tick was like a hammer blow, making my thoughts clearer. If Michael had decided this, then I would have my own way. Not with tears, not with begging. My phone buzzed in my purse. It was Martha, my friend since our days at the town library. I answered, trying to sound normal. "Olivia, are you free this afternoon? I just made that apple pie you love so much." I managed a small smile. "Maybe I'll stop by, but first I need your help with something." Half an hour later, I left my room with a small handbag. Michael looked up, frowning. "Where are you going?" "To get some air." "Don't wait up for me," I answered sharply. He was about to say something, but his phone rang. He looked at the screen and ignored me as if I had already disappeared from his world. I met Martha at a coffee shop near the bus station. When I told her what happened, her eyes grew dark. "He said that to you, in the house that you bought?" He nodded. "I think it's time for me to go, but I'm not going to leave them anything valuable." Martha rested her chin on her hand. Her eyes showed shared understanding. "Are you thinking of selling the house?" I replied. "Not just selling it fast and in secret so they don't have time to react. They think I'll just leave quietly, but I'll be the one to take back everything that's mine before I disappear." The plan began that very night. Martha introduced me to a trusted real estate agent, Mr. Johnson, who had helped her with a messy problem about an apartment. He agreed to meet me privately in his office, off the record. Sitting under the warm glow of a desk lamp, we talked about the details. "You want to sell the whole property. The house is in your name, correct?" he asked. All the legal papers are mine, I replied firmly. Mr. Johnson smiled. Then it'll be easy. I have a couple of cash buyers. If you agree, I can close the deal in less than a week. 1 week. Not nearly enough time for Michael and his wife to realize what was happening. I pictured the scene, them coming home after a long day, only to find the house was no longer theirs. And inside I felt an unexpected calm. When I got back home, Michael was already out. The living room was silent. I took one last look at every piece of furniture I had chosen, every photo on the wall. Soon none of it would belong to them anymore. I turned on my computer. I sent an email to Mr. Johnson. We start tomorrow. Keep everything absolutely private. As I hit send, I noticed my hands were no longer shaking. I was no longer the woman who put up with everything in silence in this house. I was getting ready to leave, but this time I was taking everything that was mine with me. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The soft autumn light came through the curtains, filling the kitchen with a gentle yellow glow. I made a strong pot of coffee, poured it into my white ceramic mug, sat down at the table, and opened my old leather-bound notebook. Page after page held numbers, dates, and lists of items I had bought for this house. The imported sofa from Italy, the Japanese knives, the dishwasher installed last year. I marked the ones that were small enough to take with me or sell separately. Each red check mark was a memory, but it was also something of value. At 9 o'clock sharp, Mr. Johnson called. Mrs. Garcia, I found a young couple looking for a house in this neighborhood. They're ready to pay in cash, but they want to see it as soon as possible. I replied immediately. Could they come this afternoon? Perfect. Do you want them to meet the family living there? Paused for a moment. No, I'll make sure the house is empty. After hanging up, I knew I had to act carefully. Michael and his wife worked all day, but I needed to be sure they wouldn't come back unexpectedly. I sent my son a text. I'm having a visitor this afternoon. Don't come home early. Michael replied quickly. Okay, do whatever you want. A reply so short it confirmed everything. To him, my being in that house no longer meant a thing. Around noon, I started packing some of my things. I put the valuable items in cardboard boxes and labeled them. I would send them one by one to a storage place Martha helped me rent. I dragged the boxes to Martha's car parked right outside the door. At 3 o'clock, the buying couple arrived with Mr. Johnson. They were young, dressed simply, but their eyes lit up as they walked in. They didn't know the story behind the walls. They only saw a warm, clean house full of possibilities. I guided them through each room, showing every detail like an experienced salesperson, though inside I felt both relieved and bitter. We love this house, the wife said, looking at her husband. He nodded. If you agree, we can put down a payment right now. I looked at Mr. Johnson. He gave a slight nod, confirming everything was going as planned. After they left, I locked the door and stood in the middle of the living room. This space had seen more than I wanted to remember. Silent dinners, rude comments, and the moment Michael bluntly asked me to disappear. I would sleep here one last night not because I had to but because I chose to. One last look before leaving on my own terms. On the kitchen table, the payment agreement sat neatly. Everything was in motion, and for the first time in months I was in control. That night I didn't fall asleep right away. I sat by the living room window, watching the streetlights shine through the garden trees. In my hands a cup of hot tea, the steam rising in small spirals, just like the thoughts in my head. My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. Mom, can you watch Sarah tomorrow? Emily wants to go out all day. I smiled, but not with happiness. It was a smile of irony. I truly loved my granddaughter, Sarah. But Michael's tone made it clear that to them I was nothing more than a free babysitter. I replied, No, I'm busy. Just 3 words. But I knew Michael would have to read them several times. I rarely said no to him directly. The next morning I got up early. The sky was hazy, the garden covered in mist. I made coffee and started the day's task, packing. The sound of packing tape sealing boxes was like a final cut, breaking old ties. Around 10 Martha arrived. Her eyes looked at the stacked boxes. "You're moving fast," she said. "I want to finish before they start asking questions," I replied, handing her a list. "This goes to the storage place. The rest to an auction house." Martha helped me load the rented truck. The driver was a young, quiet, hard-working kid. I had already paid for 6 months at the storage place. Enough time to get settled in a new place. In the afternoon, I got a call from Mr. Johnson. "Mrs. Garcia, the payment has been sent. I'll prepare the final sales papers for you to sign on Friday." I looked at the calendar. Friday was just 3 days away. 3 days to finish everything. And the last 3 days I would live here. That night, Michael and Emily still weren't home. I had dinner alone. A simple bowl of chicken soup with bread. The silence was so deep I could hear the clock ticking. Strangely, I didn't feel lonely. Around 9 they arrived. I was still at the table reading. Emily looked at the boxes but didn't ask anything. Maybe she thought I was just cleaning out some space. Michael was focused on his phone. "Remember to watch Sarah tomorrow," Emily said. Her tone was a command, not waiting for a reply. I closed my book and looked her in the eyes. "I already told Michael, I'm busy." She raised her eyebrows, about to argue, but she held back. Maybe my voice surprised her. It was calm but firm. When they went upstairs, I looked around the house one more time. Everything was starting to separate from me, becoming the past. And I knew that when Friday came I would walk out, not as someone who was kicked out, but as someone who chose to leave. On Thursday morning, I got an unexpected call from my old lawyer, Mr. Davis, who handled the paperwork when I bought the house. His voice was serious and worried. "Olivia, I received some information from a local bank. Someone is trying to use your house to borrow a large amount of money. Do you know anything about this?" I gripped the phone. "No." "And who is it?" Mr. Davis sighed. "The papers were sent in Michael and Emily's names, but the problem is," he paused, "they included a copy of a legal paper in your name with a signature that looks just like yours." Closed my eyes. I wasn't surprised, but the feeling of being stabbed in the back was awful. "Mr. Davis, I never signed any legal paper for them. That has to be fake." "I believe you. Do you want me to send a request right away to block the loan and start a legal check?" "Of course, and as quickly as possible. I'll send you a copy of my real signature." After hanging up, I stood still. The house wasn't even sold yet, and they were already trying to use it to borrow money. It wasn't enough for me to leave. They still wanted to take advantage of me while I was here. In the afternoon, I called Mr. Johnson and quickly explained the situation. His voice was firm. "Don't worry, Olivia. Once the sale is closed, any loan against the property will be cancelled. I'll make sure our sales contract comes first." I continued packing that afternoon. Each object in a box was a final punctuation mark. Martha came back with 2 bags of food and coffee. "I heard from Mr. Davis," she said. "You did the right thing selling it quickly. Otherwise, they would have found more ways to tie you down." That evening, Michael came home earlier than usual. I was in the kitchen when I heard the door. He walked in and looked at the stacked boxes. "Mom, are you leaving?" I looked at him, thinking about whether to answer or stay silent. Finally I said, "Yes." Michael bit his lip. "You don't have to." Cut him off. "There's no need to explain. I've already decided." He fell silent, but there was worry in his eyes. I didn't ask any more questions, not because I didn't want to know, but because words were no longer needed. When he went up to his room, I returned to the table, opened my leather notebook, and drew a line. Tomorrow, sign the sales contract. Tomorrow, this house would no longer be mine or theirs. And for me, it wouldn't be a loss. It would be freedom. On Friday morning, I woke up with a mix of excitement and caution. Today was the day to sign the sales contract for the house. But before I even got out of bed, I received a strange email. Subject: request to stop property sale. Sender: a law firm I had never heard of. The message was short. Our client, Mr. Michael Garcia, claims that the current sale of the house is not legal because he has living rights and ownership benefits over said property. We ask for an immediate stop to all actions. I read it twice, then smiled coldly. It was clearly a last-minute desperate move by Michael, but he didn't know. The entire property was in my name, and bank records showed there was no legal shared living agreement. I immediately called Mr. Johnson. He let out a small laugh. Relax, Olivia. This is just an attempt to buy time. We have all the legal papers in order. They have no right to stop this. I had decided not to tell Michael about the contract signing the night before. The less information he had, the safer it was. At noon, I drove to Mr. Johnson's office. The sky was clear, but a cold wind was blowing. In the meeting room, the file was already perfectly arranged. Mr. Johnson and my lawyer, Mr. Davis, were both there. You just need to sign here, here, and here, Mr. Davis said, pointing at each page. The pen in my hand moved smoothly over the paper. Each signature felt like cutting an invisible string. When I finished, I put the pen down and let out a breath of relief. Mr. Johnson carefully collected the papers and nodded. Done. The money will be sent to your new account within 24 hours. The account is with a different bank. No one but you will have access to it. On the way back, I stopped by a small shop on the edge of town and bought a new suitcase. Not too big, but big enough for the basics for my next chapter. I hadn't decided where I would go yet, but I was sure I wouldn't leave an easy trail to follow. When I got home, Michael and Emily were already there. Emily was sitting on the sofa, scrolling through her phone. Michael was leaning against the kitchen doorway, watching me with suspicion. Where were you all day, Mom? He asked. I took off my coat and hung it up. Just taking care of some personal business. Emily then spoke, her tone full of acid. I hope those personal matters don't hurt this family. I looked her directly in the eye but only smiled. This family hurts itself, Emily. She froze for a second, then looked away. That night, as I closed my bedroom door, I placed the new suitcase at the foot of my bed. Only one thought stayed in my mind. Tomorrow I will leave, and by the time they realize it, it will be too late. On Saturday morning, I had just poured myself a cup of coffee when I heard loud banging on the door. It wasn't a polite knock, but an urgent, demanding pounding, almost as if they wanted to break it down. I opened it to find two police officers on the doorstep, a man and a woman, both in perfect uniforms. Mrs. Olivia Garcia? The male officer asked. Yes, that's me. He held up a paper. We have a search order for this home at the request of the complainant, Mr. Michael Garcia. It is claimed that you are trying to hide shared belongings without permission. I stayed calmer than they expected. Shared belongings. This house is in my name. It's entirely mine. Go ahead, but you won't find anything legal to hold me here. They entered and began to check each room. Emily and Michael came running down from upstairs. Emily was still in her pajamas, her hair messy, but her eyes were bright, as if she expected to see me in handcuffs. Does Mom really think she can sell the house without asking us? Emily said word for word. I looked at her the way you look at a child caught stealing cookies and denying it. I don't think so. I know I can, and I already did. Michael stepped forward, raising his voice. This is the family home. You can't just destroy everything because you're upset. I let out a laugh, a sound that surprised even me. Family. You call it a family when you plan debts behind my back, make fake legal papers, and hire lawyers to block me. The female officer stepped in, her tone serious. Sir, ma'am, all the papers confirm that the property belongs only to Mrs. Garcia. This order only lets us search, not take property. There are no signs of a crime here, so we'll be leaving. Emily's face went pale. Michael bit his lip, saying nothing more. When the police left, I walked to the dining table, pulled a thick envelope from my jacket, and placed it on the table. Here is a copy of the sales contract signed yesterday. The sale is closed. The money is already in a place you will never be able to touch. Emily lunged to grab the envelope, but I pulled it back. No, this is my copy. You'll get the official papers from the lawyer in a few days. From this moment, You have exactly 4 days to find another place to live. A heavy silence filled the room. No more banging, no more police. Just the plain truth. Michael stared at me with a mix of shock and panic. Emily turned away, clenching her fists so tight her knuckles turned white. I picked up my coffee cup, took a sip, and spoke slowly. I told you, by the time you understood, it would already be too late. On Sunday morning, as I was packing more boxes, I heard a crash downstairs. When I went down, I froze. Michael and Emily were tearing the living room apart. Drawers were pulled out, papers scattered all over the floor. "What are you doing?" he yelled. My voice echoed louder than I expected. Emily looked up, her eyes as sharp as knives. "We're looking for the sales papers. You have no right to do this. If we find them, we'll cancel the sale." I walked straight to the center of the room, standing in front of the drawer Emily had just opened. "You dare touch another thing of mine and I'm calling the police right now." But Michael grabbed a stack of papers. I slapped them out of his hand. The sheets flew through the air. "This is my medical certificate. How low are you willing to go?" "Don't pretend, Mom," Michael snarled. "You've changed. You're not the one who used to put the family first. Now all you do is think about yourself." I let out a dry laugh. Think about myself. After decades of working hard, paying off debts, buying this house for you, taking care of your children, quietly putting up with your wife's rude comments. If this is the first time I'm thinking of myself, then it's long overdue. Emily lunged toward me, pointing a finger in my face. "We're not leaving. You can't kick us out." I stepped even closer, my voice as cold as ice. "I'm not kicking you out. The new owner will, and when the police come to back them up, don't expect me to step in." Michael's face turned red. His hand clenched into a fist. I saw the fire burning in his eyes, but he didn't dare do anything. Maybe because he knew that if he crossed that line, the results would no longer be just a family matter. "I have put up with enough," I said slowly. "You've gotten used to me staying silent, but my silence no longer means I agree." Emily let out a scornful laugh, but my voice rose above it. "In 4 days, I will hand over the keys to the new owner. If you are still here, they will call the police, and I will be on their side." They both stood there, frozen, out of excuses, just glares filled with hate. I bent down, picked up the papers from the floor, and put them back in the drawer, slamming it shut with so much force that the whole room shook. "If you touch my things one more time, there will be no warning." Then I went up to my room, leaving them in the middle of the mess and the truth they could no longer change. That afternoon I decided to leave the house for a few hours to get some fresh air. I went to a small coffee shop in the center of town. I sat in a quiet corner with a book and a cappuccino. I had barely read a few pages when my phone started buzzing non-stop. The first message was from my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Peterson. "Olivia, what's going on at your house? I see a moving truck parked out front. They're taking things out." I called her immediately. "Can you explain?" "2 young men. Emily is giving them orders. They're loading a large closet and the dining room table." "I thought you were moving out." I gripped the phone. "No, that's mine." Without thinking, I left the coffee shop and drove back. When I arrived, the scene made my blood boil. The truck was open, already full of furniture, most of which was on my list to take with me. Emily was in the yard on the phone, pointing for the men to continue. Michael was nowhere to be seen. I screeched to a stop. I slammed the car door so hard that everyone turned to look at me. "Put everything on the ground now," shouted. My voice echoed through the air. Emily scowled. "Mom, you're back early. I was just helping you get your things out faster. You're busy." I walked to the truck and stood in front of it, blocking the way. "This is my property. If you take one more thing out of this house, I'm calling the police right now." The 2 men looked at each other and put the furniture down. They clearly didn't want any trouble. Emily came closer, her voice low and mean. "You're overreacting. We have rights too." I took out my phone and called the police station directly. "Your rights end at the front door of this house, and this house will soon no longer be yours. Hearing me speak to the police, Emily turned around, muttering insults. The truck left within minutes, leaving the furniture scattered at the entrance. I stood there looking at the mess, my heart still racing. A part of me wanted to cry with anger, but the clarity I felt was stronger. This was proof they were willing to act behind my back to break the law. That night, I sent all the photos and Mrs. Peterson's words to my lawyer, Mr. Davis. He replied briefly, "Let them keep digging their own hole. It will make it easier for us to win." I closed the email, looked at the torn-apart room and told myself, just 3 days left, 3 days and this will all be over. The next morning, I got an unusually early call from Mr. Davis's office. His voice was serious. "Olivia, you need to know this. Last night, Michael contacted another agency claiming you have lost your mental ability and asking for help to stop the sale of the house." I sat up straight, my heart pounding. Mental ability. Based on what? He sent a copy of a mental health check, but the doctor's signature is an obvious fake. I called the clinic listed on the paper and they confirmed they have no record of you as a patient. I laughed with disgust, though inside I was boiling. "They're getting desperate." "They are," Mr. Davis said. "But this is serious. If we don't act fast, they could delay the sale. I recommend you come to the office today to sign an official response along with a real medical certificate." I agreed and immediately called Dr. Taylor, my family doctor for over 10 years. Within an hour, I had a certificate of sound mental health in my hands, complete with his signature and official red seal. On the way to Mr. Davis's office, I thought about every move Michael and Emily had made. Forgery, trespassing, attempted theft, and now making up a story about my mental health to take away my rights. Each move was a stab in the back, but it was also a nail in their own coffin. At the office, Mr. Davis already had the papers ready. "We'll file the response today. Also, I'll request a formal check for fake medical papers. If intent to trick is proven, this will become a criminal matter." I signed each page with a steady hand. "Mr. Davis, I want to see this through to the end. No more giving in. They need to pay for what they've done." He nodded. "I understand." When I got home at noon, I saw Michael sitting on the porch, phone in hand, avoiding my eyes. Emily wasn't there. I walked past him but I heard him say, "Mom, this is going too far." I turned and faced him. "Too far. The day you decided to trick me, it had already gone too far, and now there's no turning back." Michael opened his mouth, but I had already gone inside and shut the door. There was no room left for pity. That afternoon, Mr. Davis sent an email. "The response has been accepted by the court. The sale of the house will go forward as planned. The check into the fake papers will begin this week." Reading it, I leaned back in my chair, and for the first time in weeks, I truly smiled. Only 2 days left. On Monday morning, I was checking my list of boxes when the doorbell rang. On the porch was a woman in a dark suit holding a briefcase. "Mrs. Olivia Garcia?" she asked. "That's me. I'm a social worker from Adult Protective Services. We've received a report that you may be a victim of money abuse and we need to step in urgently." I frowned. "A report from whom?" "That information is private," she replied professionally. "But I need to ask you a few questions, and I may need to check your living conditions." I understood immediately. Michael or Emily had called, but this time they were trying to act like they were helping, pretending to be worried to delay the sale of the house. "Please come in," I said, keeping my voice calm. The social worker opened her notebook and began asking about my income, my bank accounts, and my health. I answered clearly, showing Dr. Taylor's medical certificate and the statement from my new bank account. "That's strange," she commented, "because the report describes you as a weak, elderly person unable to manage your money who was forced to sign papers against her will." I let out a laugh, though there was nothing funny about it. I suppose they forgot to mention that I was the one who started the sale of the house, and that I signed all the papers myself in front of witnesses. When the social worker reviewed the sales contract and supporting papers, her look softened. "It seems someone is trying to use the system to make your life difficult." I'll note this in my report and close the case today. Before she left, she added, if they file any more false reports, that will be breaking the law. I nodded, thanked her, and closed the door. Anger burned inside me, but I also felt slight relief. Another one of their tricks had been torn down. That afternoon, Martha came by with a bag of freshly baked pastries. When I told her what happened, her eyes widened. They have no shame. Only 2 days left, Liv. Hang in there. Together, we arranged the last of the boxes. My suitcase was packed. The papers and contracts were stored in a portable safe. As night fell, with the streetlights casting shadows in the empty living room, I stood and looked around. The faded walls, the empty nails where photos once hung. There was nothing left to tie me to this place. I whispered into the empty space. Just 48 more hours and it will all be over. And I knew that this ending would be nothing like what Michael and Emily had imagined. The next morning I got an email from Mr. Johnson with a subject line, change in handover date. The message was short. The buyer has asked to take the house 1 day early. This means we will complete all paperwork this afternoon. If you agree, I will handle everything. I read it again to make sure I wasn't mistaken. This afternoon meant that Michael and Emily would have less than 10 hours before losing all rights to the house. I called Mr. Johnson immediately. I agree. Do it as quickly as possible and keep it quiet. He chuckled softly. Understood. I'll bring the final papers to your house at 3 p.m. I hung up and stood in the kitchen, feeling a new energy rush through me. My leaving would be sooner than expected, and they wouldn't have time to react. At noon, Michael and Emily still hadn't returned. I took the chance to call the moving company, asking them to come that very afternoon. Martha was also there to help me watch over things. We worked without stopping. The boxes were lined up. The suitcase was closed and the portable safe was ready by the door. Around 2 o'clock, I heard a car pull into the driveway. Emily got out of the car smiling, but when she saw the moving truck parked in front of the house, her smile disappeared. What is this? What do you think you're doing, Mom? I didn't answer right away. I continued signing papers with the movers. Michael got out of the car, frowning. Mom, you said we still had 2 days. I looked him straight in the eye. The plan changed. I'm handing over the house this afternoon. Emily froze. No, you can't. I stopped her, my voice icy. I can, and I already did. The buyer wanted to move up the date, and I accepted. As of 4 o'clock this afternoon, this will no longer be your home. Michael took a step toward me, angry. You're trying to embarrass us. I smiled with disgust. No, this is the result of your choices. At 3 o'clock sharp, Mr. Johnson arrived. We signed the last papers in the living room with Martha and 2 movers as witnesses. As soon as I lifted the pen, Mr. Johnson confirmed. The sale is complete. The new owner will be here to pick up the keys in an hour. I put the contract in my purse and turned to Michael and Emily. I'll be gone before they arrive. I suggest you do the same. Emily opened her mouth to argue, but couldn't find the words. Michael stood still, his eyes fixed on the floor. I walked out the door with my suitcase in hand, Martha by my side. The air outside was cool and surprisingly light. That afternoon it would all end, and this time on my terms. As Martha and I were pushing my suitcase toward the car, a black SUV turned sharply and pulled into the driveway. The door flew open. 2 men in suits got out, followed by a middle-aged woman with a stern look. The woman came straight to me, pulling a stack of papers from her briefcase. Mrs. Olivia Garcia, I am the lawyer for Mr. Michael Garcia and Mrs. Emily Garcia. We are here to give you a temporary stop order to halt the handover, issued by the district court. I listened to every word, feeling no fear. Based on what is this order? My client claims that you sold the property below its worth in order to hide shared belongings, causing harm to their rightful inheritance claims, she read from the paper. I laughed softly. This house is not a shared belonging, and they have no inheritance rights as long as I am alive. That order won't last 24 hours. Martha stepped forward. She's just buying time and she knows it. One of the men in suits stepped in, demanding that I stop moving my things until the order was reviewed. I looked at them, then at Mr. Johnson, who had just come out with his briefcase. Mr. Johnson raised an eyebrow. This morning, I gave all legal property papers to the court. This order is based on false information. I'm calling the judge right now. While Mr. Johnson was on the phone, I turned on my phone's voice recorder. Please repeat the claim so I can have it on record. The lawyer hesitated but ended up reading the full text. Her voice was recorded word for word. A few minutes later, Mr. Johnson returned with a cold smile. The judge has already reviewed the case. The stop order has been immediately cancelled. You all should leave before the police arrive to support the new homeowner. The lawyer's face hardened. She stuffed the papers back in her bag and turned away without another word. The two men followed her, clearly annoyed. Emily, who had been on the porch the whole time, stormed down and shouted, "Mom will pay dearly for betraying us." I looked at her, my voice serious and clear. "No, Emily, you will pay for mixing up my kindness with weakness." Less than an hour later, the new owner's car pulled into the driveway. They shook my hand, received the keys, and went into the house. Michael and Emily stayed there, frozen, as if they couldn't believe it was all over. Martha and I got in the car. As we pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror at the image of those two people standing on the porch, lost in a space that no longer belonged to them. And I knew I had won this battle fair and square. Not even 10 minutes had passed since we left the street when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated but answered. "Mrs. Garcia," a deep male voice said. "This is Detective Miller from the Sheriff's Department. I need you to come to the station this afternoon about an ongoing check." I frowned. "What matter?" "There's a complaint saying that you stole personal belongings from Mr. Michael and Mrs. Emily Garcia during the process of moving out of the recently sold house. We need you to come in and explain the situation." I let out a laugh, this time not hiding the sarcasm. "They are very stubborn. Regardless, I need you to appear so everything can be officially recorded." "The sooner the better," the detective said, his tone serious but not threatening. Martha looked at me when I hung up. "Another trick." "Yes, but this time I'm not just going to defend myself," I replied. We stopped by the storage place first. I wanted to pick up several boxes of papers I had already prepared. Bills, receipts, photographs of every piece of furniture in the house before I moved, along with proofs of purchase. Everything with dates, signatures, and bank records. At the station, Detective Miller met me in a small room. He opened a thin folder. "Mrs. Garcia, this is the list of items the complainants claimed you took illegally. A set of sofas, wall paintings, a coffee maker, and a portable safe." Calmly, I placed each photo and receipt on the table. "Here is the bill for the sofa purchased from a furniture store in 2018 in my name. Here is the receipt for the painting bought at an exhibition in the city, also in my name. The coffee maker was a Christmas gift I bought for myself last year, and the portable safe." I placed the warranty certificate in front of him. "Purchased with my credit card with the bank statement included." Detective Miller reviewed each paper, his look changing from doubt to interest. "You're very well prepared. I knew they would try everything. That's why I didn't leave any loose ends." After nearly half an hour, he closed the folder. "I will note in the report that this complaint has no basis. If you wish, you can file a counterclaim for false accusation." I gave a small smile. "I'll think about it. But believe me, Detective, I don't forget." Leaving the station, each step felt lighter. Not because they had failed again, but because I understood that each attack only made me stronger. In the afternoon, the sun painted the new path I was taking in gold, and this time there was no shadow of the old house behind me. That night, alone in my newly rented apartment, a yellow lamp cast a dim light on the empty table. The silence was so deep I could hear the clock ticking. Although everything was almost settled, my heart still felt heavy. My lawyer, Mr. Davis, called. His voice was serious, measured. "Olivia, I just got a report from the investigator. There's something you need to know." I swallowed hard. What is it? Last week, while you were busy with the sale, Emily tried to open a line of credit in your name. She used fake papers. Luckily, the bank became suspicious and said no, but it's clear they haven't stopped. I closed my eyes in silence. A part of me wasn't surprised, but it still felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Thank you, Mr. Davis. I'll think about what to do. After hanging up, I went out onto the balcony. The night was still, the air was cool, lighted windows in the buildings across the street. Maybe families having dinner together, laughing. A simple scene I was no longer a part of. I leaned against the railing, letting the memories flood in. Family meals, Michael's laughter as a child, the proud look in my husband Richard's eyes every time we got through a challenge. Now it was all a far-off echo. Back in the room, I opened the small wooden box I always carried with me. Inside were some old photos. Michael with messy hair smiling next to the treehouse, a family photo at Christmas with all of us in red sweaters, and a letter Richard wrote to me, the ink now faded with time. I touched each item, feeling like I held a lifetime in my hands, a life I had given away only to end up with this distance. The phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You think it's over, Mom? Not yet. I knew it was Emily, but I didn't open it again. I no longer had the strength to reply or to be angry. All that was left was a quiet sadness, like a fog covering everything. Put the phone down. I sat there in the dark. I had won in a sense, but I felt like I had lost more than just the house. Maybe because this victory meant putting an end to any hope of keeping what was once called a family. Before going to sleep, I closed the wooden box and put it in a drawer. Outside, the city continued to breathe. Life went on, and I just kept saying to myself in silence, let tomorrow be different, or at least I have to believe it will be. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The dawn light came in clear and warm, warmer than any other day I could remember in months. I made myself a black coffee, no sugar, no milk, a pure bitterness like the feeling of that moment. Clear, orderly, with no room for old attachments. I opened the drawer and took out the wooden box. Inside were the photos, the letter, and the key to the old house. I looked at them one last time. There was no longer a sharp pain in my chest. They were still part of my memories, but they no longer had power over me. I put them all in an envelope, sealed it, and sent it to the storage place with the other boxes. Memories, just like belongings, should also be kept in a safe place where no one can ruin them. The phone rang. It was Martha. Liv, what are your plans for today? I'm going to close my old bank account, cut all remaining ties with them, I replied, my voice light. Martha laughed. I'll give you a ride. Consider it your official goodbye tour. We went to the bank where I asked to move all the money to a new account, completely separate from the old one. The bank worker asked if I wanted to keep the old account open. I just shook my head. Signing the closing paper felt like shutting a rusty, stuck door that had been jammed for years and finally setting it free. At noon, I arrived at Mr. Davis's office. He handed me a file with all the legal paperwork to protect my belongings and stop Michael and Emily from getting to them. You're safe now, Olivia, he said. And for the first time I completely believed those words. After leaving the office, Martha and I had lunch at a small restaurant by the lake. The wind carried the fresh smell of water. The sunlight sparkled on the bright surface. I realized I was sitting up straight, not hunched over as if trying to protect myself from an invisible blow. When I returned to the apartment, I stood on the balcony, looking out at the street. Cars coming and going, people walking their dogs, the laughter of children playing in the nearby park. The world kept on living, and so did I, but this time for myself. I took a deep breath, relaxed my shoulders, and let a real smile come out. It wasn't because I had gotten revenge, but because I had pulled myself out of the swamp. They no longer had any right to touch my life. That afternoon, I organized my desk again and opened a blank page. I wrote the first line. Day one of a new beginning. And I knew that from that moment on, I could write the rest of my own story without anyone else holding the pen. A week later, the rhythm of my life had completely changed. There were no more tense mornings or angry footsteps coming down the stairs. Instead, I listened to sparrows singing by the window, and the smell of coffee filled my small, tidy kitchen. I started spending time on things I had long forgotten. In the mornings, I walked in the nearby park where the maple trees were turning shades of yellow and red. Every step felt light without the rush of returning to face the coldness of the old house. I realized that for all that time I had been living like a guest in my own life. Now I was truly its owner. One Tuesday afternoon, I attended a pottery class at the town arts center. Sitting at the wheel, my hands shaped the soft clay as if I were reshaping my own life. There were a few new people in the class, and we talked as if we had known each other forever. No one asked about my past, and I didn't have to explain anything. There I was, just Olivia, a woman learning to create something beautiful. Martha visited often, bringing cheerful stories from her volunteer group. One day, she invited me to join the town's tree planting group. Together, we planted flowers around the lake, our hands covered in dirt but laughing non-stop. I realized I hadn't laughed so much in a long time, and not out of sarcasm or defense, but out of real joy. In the evenings, I would sit by the window to read or write a few lines in my journal. I wrote about the little things I was grateful for: a hot cup of tea on a rainy day, a kind greeting from the doorman, the golden sunset painting the lake. When there was no one left to fear, every ordinary moment became precious. One weekend, I invited some new neighbors over for dinner. We shared food, life stories, and laughter that filled the apartment. Looking around the table, I understood with total clarity. Happiness is not something that has to be bought with suffering. True happiness is feeling safe being yourself and being surrounded by those who respect you. Before going to sleep, I stood on the balcony and watched the city lights twinkle. Inside me, everything was calm, like the peaceful surface of the lake. I said to myself in a low voice, "I've taken my life back, and this time it belongs completely to me." That feeling, I knew then, was true happiness. This story is a reminder that the love and sacrifice of parents cannot be seen as an endless obligation. When family ties are replaced by abuse and taking advantage, choosing to leave is not running away, but protecting one's own dignity and peace. Sometimes loving yourself is the only way to keep living. And it's also a warning to others. Affection must be taken care of with respect, not assumed to be eternal.